welcome to Inside the Nest, the sports show created by Canisius College students for your entertainment. I'm your host, Joe Soisson. Joining me at the desk is Dean Bogart. This is our first show of the 2018 spring semester, and we'll be covering professional and collegiate level sports. A lot has happened since our last show, so let's hop right in. We're going to start with the NFL. There were a ton of storylines to follow, especially when it comes to the playoffs. 4 of the longest playoff droughts ended this year as the Jaguars, Titans, Bills, and Rams all overcame their regular season demons and made the playoffs. That was just the start of all the postseason drama, but for this segment, being in the city of Buffalo, we're going to focus on the Bills. The Bills lost to Jacksonville the first round in a defensive slugfest as the final score was 3-10 Jaguars. Disappointing if you're a Bills fan? Yes, but what hurt more was the news that came last weekend. Starting center Eric Wood was diagnosed with a career-ending neck injury. In terms of what this means for the organization, Eric Wood will be placed on IR unless he retires. For now, the Bills have a long offseason to figure out how to break their next longest drought they have, playoff wins. What do the Bills need to do in order to get their first playoff win, Dean?
Good evening, Joe. Well, I think this has been a discussion amongst fans as well as the high command of the organization. The Bills need a quarterback with a consistent throwing game. Taylor's main strength is running, and Peterman and Taylor both can't finish what needs to be done in terms of throwing. This last season, the fans were put on an emotional roller coaster thinking that this season was going to be a tank, and then suddenly watching their team in the playoffs for the first time since 1999. In my opinion, I think the Bills should focus on signing a college athlete that is young, energetic, and full of potential that can stick with the organization over a long period of time.
Yeah, I agree. And to that note, there are plenty of guys in the draft that they could draft from. I forget what positions they have in the draft, but one of the guys they were talking about before this Eric Wood injury was, or one of the guys I liked anyway, was Lamar Jackson, I believe, from the quarterback from Louisville. He basically put Louisville football on the map, and I would like to see the Bills go for him. But, you know, it was said that this incoming draft class was quarterback heavy with guys like Rosen and Darnold and the guy out of Oklahoma State.
Baker Mayfield.
And Oklahoma, too. But it was just such a quarterback heavy class that I would imagine that the Bills would spend a draft pick getting a quarterback. The other thing that I think the Bills need to do is with this Eric Wood injury, they might want to spend I don't know if they want to spend their first draft pick on a center, but I don't know. But it all depends on how much the Bills trust their backup center. His last name is Groy. I forget his first name, but either way, I think the Bills need to fill in those two spots because I agree, Tyrod and Nate. I feel bad for Peterman in his 2 prime time, I guess, spots. He throws 6 interceptions. It's just. That's a little bit of a rough stat, but definitely Tyrod Taylor, he'll at least get the start next year, but it'll certainly be interesting what the Bills do in the offseason. So next up, we have the NHL. Its All-Star Weekend was last weekend, which roughly marks the end of the first half of the season. The All-Star Weekend had plenty of highlights to it, such as the Pacific All-Star team defeating the Central All-Star team and the Atlantic All-Star team in the final round. Brock Besser, the rookie draft pick from Vancouver, won MVP on the All-Star game. Meanwhile, looking at standings, Tampa Bay and Washington sit in the number 1 seeds in the Eastern Conference. A different story in the Western Conference as there are 2 new faces leading each division. Winnipeg leads the Central and Las Vegas leads the Pacific. As the second half of the season starts up, which team do you think is the most dangerous when it comes to the playoff race?
I feel like this is a theme of 2017 where new teams are entering leagues and dominate like Atlanta United and MLS. I think the Las Vegas Knights are going to dominate the NHL for the rest of the season and make a statement in the playoffs. This is a team that's completely caught everybody off guard, completely new. Nobody knows what to expect from this team. I think they're going to get the fastest Stanley Cup that any expansion team has ever had.
Yeah, I agree. I was shocked by the results of Las Vegas. At the very start of the season, they were crushing it in home games, and even on the road, they were surprising people. And so I think they can keep that momentum going, and part of that is their goaltender play. Fleury, he's won a Stanley Cup with the Penguins, And now with Vegas, he's standing tall. And even their backup is Malcolm Subban, I believe, PK Subban, an all-star player himself, a defender for now Nashville. But his younger brother backing up Fleury in Vegas, even he's doing well. So I agree with that. The other two teams I wanted to look at, or I think will be interesting to look at as the season goes on, the New Jersey Devils from the East anyway, and back in the West, I think Anaheim could give Las Vegas a run for their money the way they've been playing, and their goaltenders too have been playing solid as well. Gibson and Miller there, and you saw in the All-Star game they had a forward Raquel, who basically he was playing fantastic. So I think Anaheim can give Vegas a run for their money.
Mm-hmm. And it took 18 years for an expansion team to get their first Stanley Cup, and that was the Predators back in the 80s. So let's see what the Las Vegas Knights can accomplish.
They might get there faster. If they continue their win streak, they'll probably end up they'll probably end up with at least home field advantage over in the first round, maybe even the second round. So we'll see. We'll have to see how that pans out. It'll definitely be interesting to watch as the season goes on. The next up on our list is the NBA. The latest news came out of the trade between the Clippers and the Pistons. Blake Griffin is gone from Los Angeles. It's Blake Griffin, Bryce Johnson, and Willie Reed from the Clippers, all headed to Detroit. The Clippers, in return, get Tobias Harris, Avery Bradley, and Boban Marjanovic, and a first and second round draft pick. Now, this was a big move for both of those teams since both are on the cusp of a playoff spot. However, when it comes to the playoffs, we've seen Cleveland and Golden State dominate the league for the past few years. It is worth noting that where Golden State holds first in the West by 2.5 games, Cleveland sits in third behind the Raptors and the Celtics. This is so the question I pose, is this the year that the streak of seeing Cleveland and Golden State in the finals ends?
I mean, right now the Cavaliers are having a rough season compared to the past few years. Golden State, they're not on a crazy win streak, but those are things we expect from these teams just because of what they've accomplished in the past, and it's just those stand out because how extraordinary they are. That's not normal in an NBA season. You don't expect the number one and number two team to have a 60-game win streak or something. This is something normal that's happened, but just because you're not a crazy win streak or you're not the 1 or 2 seed doesn't mean you're going to end up in the finals. I think before we make any presumptions about a legacy ending or a run ending for Golden State or the Cavaliers, we still have the playoffs, and we're far from the playoffs. So I think we should wait until it matters most, the playoffs, to judge where the Cavaliers or Golden State can make it to the finals.
Right, and it is very early to make that kind of a prediction. But I also think it's worth noting that Cleveland, this might be a team. The reason I pose this question is this might be a team that in trades has I almost feel downgraded with the loss of Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie Irving goes to a team that is now in first place. Boston, the Celtics, hold first place in the division. But I also think if Cleveland makes it this year, it's almost a testament, a testament to the legacy that this team has built. The whole discussion in the NBA is how do we combat these super teams, and do we create more super teams to beat super teams? I put super teams in quotations because they're not unbeatable, but it's almost like they just flick the light switch and all of a sudden you see points just go on the board. It's how Golden State has just ran away with games before. It's like they're down by a couple points and then all of a sudden they just make a few 3-pointers and they have a 20-point lead and the other team goes, what happened? I don't understand. So I think it'll be interesting to see, especially for Cleveland, if they can, in this case, if they don't march back into first place, then they're going to have to win some road games. And they've struggled on the road, especially in playoff games. The road has not been kind to them before. So it'll be interesting to see when that happens.
I agree.
All right, and on that note, we'll take a commercial break. Back in a few, we'll be back in a few with more sports talk. Next up on our segment is the Canisius College Athletics.
everyone loves the picture I posted of you.
AT&T reminds you, it can wait.
In a world where television channels are lacking quality entertainment, one man is willing to take on the task. To save your Friday nights. What are you laughing at?
You think people are actually gonna watch our show on Friday?
Jacob Duke. Look, you're gonna have to just stop and let me do my thing.
Okay. No. If we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this my way.
Now this is better.
Oh, I hate this channel.
What is Griff 4.1?
What is 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 4.1?
What's 4.1?
What is 4.1?
What is 4.1? What is 4.1?
What's 4.1?
What is 4.1? What is 4.1?
What's 4.1?
What is 4.1?
What's 4.1?
What is channel 4.1?
We are 4.1. We are 4.1.
We are 4.1.
We are 4.1.
We are 4.1. And
It's a great day to be a Griff.
Next up on the table is collegiate level sports, specifically oriented to Canisius. First up, we have men's basketball. The Griffs are 7-2 in the conference, which puts them as tied for second place with Iona and Niagara. The Griffs were on a 4-game win streak until they lost to Niagara on Saturday with 9 more conference games to play. What are the odds of this team winning the MAC?
I think right now the odds are favorable for the Golden Griffins as long as they keep their composure throughout the rest of the season and then get a momentum going throughout the playoffs. It was a tough loss against Niagara last week, but the men's team can get another win streak going, get that momentum going. I think they can press further than they did last year, considering they didn't have a bye this season. If they finish the season off strong, their biggest opponent should only be the guys ahead of them, Ryder.
Yeah, and I agree. I think when it comes to our men's team winning or going into the tournament, I think we've seen. I think the big key for our team is we've seen what the starters can do, but how much depth do we have? We've seen our starters put up points and make fantastic plays, but when the subs come in, I think those players are going to make a whole lot of a difference because if they can put up points while the starters are resting, then that's going to be huge. And I think it's going to be up to guys like Spencer Foley and to Colin Molson to definitely step up when that time comes. They've got 9 games to sort of get into the groove and smooth out the season, but it'll certainly be interesting to watch as the season progresses.
I agree.
Moving on, we have women's basketball. The team is 6-15 overall with a 4-6 record in conference play.
They were on a 3-game win streak, but they have dropped their last 2 games since. Now, although the standings put them in 8th in the MAC, one conference win could have them tied for 4th. So the question is, how does this team turn their season around?
Right now, the Lady Griffins are on the way to rescue their season. After an overtime victory against rivals Niagara, the Griffins need to carry this clutch mentality and intensity throughout the rest of the season. Right now in 7th place, the Griffins need to keep rising in the ranks if they want to face a lower seeded team and have a chance to move past the first round of the tournament. After a series of unsuccessful seasons, now is the time for Terry Zay to prove he can still take this team for a decent playoff run. Terry Zay, a MAC champion, has given these players the tools to make plays and dominate the floor, but these players need to up their game. Field goal percentages, for example, need to improve to get the results the team want.
Yeah, and along those lines, another thing I think that this women's team needs to improve upon is defensively. They've given up the ball more times than they have to their opponents, and they're also being outscored when they do. And when the other team gets the ball, they're not rebounding well. You know, they're being out-rebounded by about 3 or so per game, and those 3 possessions make all the difference, especially in close games. I mean, we talked about the Niagara game. That one was a close one, but you know, when it comes down to it, they need to make every possession count because, you know, they have shooters on this team. You know, both the Swedes, Henriksdottir and Halfdanerdottir, they're good shooters, but I think defensively is where they've struggled and where they need to step up. And then hockey is last up on the chopping block. With a conference record of 13-7, the Griffs currently hold first place in the AHC. The team has 2 games against Holy Cross this weekend, a team that holds second in the conference. Canisius has split its last 3 weekends with wins on Friday and losses on Saturday. The teams they played were American International, RIT, and Bentley. So which players have made the largest impact on this team?
Well, I'm going to go with the statistical leader on the team, Dylan McLaughlin, leading the team in goals and assists for the 2nd year in a row. He's simply enough as the guy leading Canisius' season this year. If he is healthy and in the right state of mind, he can lead this team as a leader and as a role model for these players to keep pushing on and get another great offseason.
Yeah, I agree. Dylan McLaughlin has definitely been a huge part of the Griff's success. The other players I want to highlight, I've loved watching the play of Grant Meyer, the young kid. He's done well for himself, and I remember in the last couple of games I was able to watch live. You know, he's been scoring goals, and so he's had good positioning. Along those lines, defensively, guys like Jimmy Mazza has played well defensively. Jesse Pereira has played great defensively. So some forwards and some defensemen have had great positioning to help out. And I wanted to highlight also some of the goaltenders as well. Urbani and Hoffley have been important because, you know, we talked about at the beginning of this year, they had big shoes to fill in Charles Williams leaving. But now they haven't quite put up the same numbers as him, but they've been able to do well enough to hold first place for them. So I think that is at least worth mentioning for this Griffs team. And we'll take another break here. When we come back, we'll wrap up the episode with our final outs.
Oh, babe, check this out. Hey, come on. You want a little chippy? You want a Dorito? Are you hungry? Come on and get a Dorito.
Babe, don't hurt my dog.
Come on, get a chip. Come on, get a chip. Get a chip. Come on. Here he comes. Here he comes.
Welcome back. It's time to wrap up our show with the final outs. And for this segment, for our final outs, I wanted to focus. It is Super Bowl weekend, so Dean and I are going to give you our Super Bowl predictions. Dean, why don't you start us off?
Well, as much as I love watching the Eagles this season completely come out of nowhere, blow everyone, away with their performance, I think I'm going to have to give this one to the Patriots. I think it's going to be 18-7 for Patriots. I think Eagles are going to, start off strongly in the game, but I think Patriots are going to break away through. Tom Brady is going to have to put a ring on his other hand for this year.
Yeah. For my prediction, I'm also going to pick the Patriots. I'm going to say 35-30. These are two of the top offenses in the NFL going against each other, and I think this game is going to look very similar to last year's Super Bowl when they played the Falcons. The Falcons jumped ahead to a huge lead, but the Patriots are the second half kind of team where they'll do whatever they think is going to work, and then they'll make the adjustment in the second half. So you'll probably see exactly what you saw in the last Super Bowl. Nick Foles or in this case, Nick Foles running the run-pass option, as they'll call it, the RPO. It'll get them a few points on the board, and they'll take a big lead going into halftime. And then you'll watch in the second half, Brady will pick away and just continue to pick away at the Eagles defense. And they've got a huge challenge in how they're going to cover Rob Gronkowski, who is going to play in the Super Bowl. It was questionable after the Jacksonville game when he took the concussion. But in the end, I think the Patriots win 35-30. And that wraps up our show. Thank you so much for watching. If you like our content, make sure you check out our channel 4.1 here on Canisius Campus TV. We also have a YouTube channel that you can check out as well. Thank you, Backstage crew, for helping us produce this show. We couldn't do it without you. Thank you, Dean, for joining me at the desk. And we hope to see you here next time you fly by the nest.